All right. PCOS. So with PCOS, there's different forms of PCOS that, individual, like females can have. There's insulin resistance, which is like about 70% of the people that have PCOS have that. Women that get those irritability, they get, a lot of what's called androgen symptoms, meaning they have higher testosterone, DHEA, these androgens. They get like oily face, they have these male characteristics and things like that. So they have insulin PCOS, and then you have post pill PCOS, and then you have adrenal PCOS, and then inflammation PCOS. But I'll be honest, they all play together. You truthfully, can't have one without the other. Because if you are a woman with adrenal PCOS, meaning that you have high cortisol issues or cortisol imbalances, that can cause inflammation, okay? But it also could cause spikes in blood sugar, okay? So we should note this when talking about PCOS, because of a lot of it does blend together. So what I'll do is just share my screen. I got a different template today. So kind of talk about PCOS and then a little bit like what is it applying with us. So like I said, with PCOS, obviously it's an umbrella diagnosis, meaning it kind of has to fit something called the Rotterdam criteria. So that's what, physicians base it off of. And that's essentially where you have two of the following. So you either have abnormal menstrual cycles, which we'll get into because that could be a whole different thing. And then longer cycles, obviously, or fewer cycles. Another thing is you have excess testosterone, you have elevated testosterone, and then you obviously have cyst in your ovaries through ultrasound perhaps. So you have to have two of these three for you to be considered to have PCOS. But here's the thing. If you have, a symptom of abnormal menstrual cycle in your, fertility, in your, years before obviously menopause and stuff like that, that could be known as something called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Okay, so there's a difference between hypothalamic amenorrhea and then having PCOS. With hypothalamic amenorrhea, many women do have, and that's obviously when there's, irregular menstrual cycles. And what happens is that, in the day-to-day life that we live in with very high stress, not sleeping and stuff like that, it pretty much suppresses something called your hypothalamic pituitary gonad axis. So that's pretty much your brain speaking to your ovaries to produce hormones and ovulate properly for menstruation. So with that being said, though, we'll get into how we fix all this, but like we want to think about, we have to have a clear decipher between PCOS and then hypothalamic amenorrhea. Okay. If you were having these abnormal menstrual cycles, let's say super heavy periods, prolonged periods, and you all obviously have, excess DHEA or testosterone, and then, you have cysts in the ovaries, well, yeah, you have PCOS. But if you are just someone that just struggles with, yeah, my cycle comes every 3 months or whatever, but you don't have excess testosterone or really, any symptoms of the cysts in the ovaries, then you don't have PCOS. But no, regardless, the only thing that individuals were given, and females, okay, given is metformin or birth control. Okay, metformin to regulate the blood sugar, birth control to regulate, obviously, your cycle or whatever. So, with all this being said, um, just knowing the decipher between the two. So, with the insulin resistance PCOS, okay, so we want to learn about what insulin does inside of our body. It obviously regulates, obviously, our blood sugars and does many other biological functions like help with energy production and so much more. But when we are insulin resistant, glucose can't get into our cells to be used for energy. What then happens though is that our pancreas keeps producing more and more insulin since insulin can't get in. And then it elevates our blood sugars. And with that elevation of blood sugars in our bloodstream, okay, that can create inflammation and throw off ovulation. Okay, so you're not getting the adequate spike in progesterone in luteal phase. that can also lead to estrogen dominance, and that can also lead to low progesterone. Okay. So, um, common reasons are obviously from, high intake of redefined grains. But here's the thing though. See, there's two populations, meaning there's a population that's overfed and under stress, and then there's a population that's underfed and overstressed. Okay. And that's majority of these women here. Okay. You guys have really hectic lifestyles. There's a lot going on. And so you're always staying stressed. And that cortisol that stays elevated then turns on a glucose molecule, because you have a glucose and a cortisol molecule called glucocorticoid. And what happens though is that they work inversely. So when you have that constant high stress, always anxious, anxiety, there's always on the go, it then elevates your blood sugars as well. And obviously that can cause this issue like insulin resistance. And then also though, so let's say you're at that point, when you have that excess insulin, it stimulates the production of luteinizing hormone in the ovaries. Okay, so elevated LH levels can cause ovaries to produce higher amounts of androgens like DHEA and testosterone. And then obviously it'll sometimes reduce estrogen, okay, normally produced by the ovaries, okay? So obviously this imbalance of the androgens and estrogen can disrupt the feedback loop between the brain and the ovaries, leading to inadequate growth of eggs, ultimately affecting their release. So this is why many females that struggle with PCOS also have fertility issues as well. But getting blood sugars under control, supporting estrogen, supporting progesterone, supporting just ovulation in its entirety is all going to help with fertility. All right, so by the way that we use the diet strategies with a lot of the Mediterranean type foods, the different foods they're eating with the different colors, and things like that, that really helps reducing the inflammation. Okay, blood sugar issues has more to do with the inflammation than actual carbohydrates in themselves. Okay, if you are super inflamed, okay, and this is true because obviously with the other clients that we have and stuff like that, we are able to get their blood sugars under control without going keto, without, going, whatever, low carb. And it's because we get to the root cause of the primary reason, and that's the inflammation. Okay. So another thing though is reducing androgens. Okay. And that could be done through obviously supporting insulin, blood sugar, but then also supporting the adrenals. Okay, using adaptogenic herbs. That's why you guys use adaptogenic herbs to help calm down. Okay, that also improves blood sugars as well, and reduce inflammation. Another thing is removing endocrine disruptors. So with some of the foods they're eating, and then things like the Metapure, the Optipure, and different things like that really help with removing the excess toxins and estrogen out of your body. Okay. So what happens is that women, are like, oh, I got this stubborn weight gain. I got this stubborn fat in my midsection. That's usually estrogen. And I can tell you that because estrogen has to get detoxified out of your liver. Okay. Majority. Okay. Your liver is your chief detoxifier. And it goes through phases. But what happens is that if you don't have proper liver detoxification pathways, and many women do not, because they actually have something called the MTHFR gene, if you've ever heard of that. Okay. That's a whole different thing. But if you have improper detox pathways, but we're improving them, okay, by specific types of greens that we're using, actual eating greens, and then different types of, the Metapure and stuff like that. If you have improper detox pathways, the excess estrogen that needed to get detox recirculates back into your body and then accumulates in fat tissue. Fat is toxic. Okay. So and then fat also leads to inflammation. So it leads to low grade inflammation. Okay. So it recirculates back in the body, the excess estrogen, and just stays there. And then it obviously causes estrogen dominance. So obviously that's why weight loss is a big thing. Well, not really weight loss, but more so because if someone's going through a body composition change, meaning they're lowering their body fat, but they're supporting lean muscle tissue, meaning they're growing in lean muscle tissue, that can make weight loss, total weight misleading, because an individual could be losing weight, fat, I should say, fat, but also be getting muscle. So it'd be a re-body composition. So their weight would relatively stay the same, but their body composition changes. And this is why pictures are great. In-body scans are great because you can actually see what's truly going on. Okay, are we looking more tighter? Do we look more toned? Okay, what does the in-body scan say? Okay, next thing is the supplements. I'd give you them, but like saw palmetto really helps with lowering the androgens as for a female. Really helps lowering those, excess androgens, because, even if you don't, so this happens with many women as well. If your testosterone levels look fine, okay, you could be still dealing with high androgen symptoms, because as a female, you could be dealing with, other androgens that could be elevated, like androstenedione, etiochalanolone. Okay, these are different androgens that help with for women to build muscle as well, and many other benefits. But that's just something to talk about too, is that just because normal blood work doesn't say, this is why, different types of testing, like functional testing, is really good. Okay, stinging needle root also helps with that. Zinc helps. Reishi mushroom, that's in some of the blends to help with lowering the stress. Inositol stress in the Vitex is chasteberry, supporting progesterone. All right. All right, so post-pill PCOS. So obviously this is after a woman gets off birth control, whether it be an oral one or an IUD. Okay, no matter what, because your body was synthetically getting hormone. So, if I was a male taking testosterone, okay, and I stopped testosterone, I wouldn't be able to make it naturally anymore unless I use something natural like HCG, which is something else. But so to say, if you were female and you were taking something that just threw off the ovulation, of you making hormone, okay, and you take it out, you can only imagine what happens now. There's just an array of symptoms, let alone the, some of the things that come with birth control, like it destroying the gut lining, it causing hypothyroidism. And this is all legitimate stuff, like off real data. So big thing, no, is that regardless if someone's coming off birth control and coming in, or you guys, like, we are always supporting like replenishment, meaning we are replenishing nutrients inside of your body. So, obviously there's different emphasis on post pill because you lose a lot of B vitamins when you are on birth control. So you're more so, directing that. But really with the post pill PCOS, you want to take a 3-step approach. You want to help replenish. So you want to replenish the micronutrients that could have been depleted in hormonal birth control. So things like zinc, magnesium, vitamin C, folate, and high quality multivitamin might help. And then obviously anti-inflammatory diet with sufficient intake, 200 to 300 calories above total daily energy expenditure, which if you're on one of the, if you're on the other one, I talked about that. So with that being said though, many people, like I said, come in underfed and overstressed, but they feel like they deal with a weight issue, but it's more so coming from cortisol, detoxification problems, and things like that. So what happens though is that we have all these nutrient deficiencies and we feel like shit. So if we can actually help replete the body back, give it back its bioavailable nutrients needed, it can really help. So with post-pill PCOS, women can actually take prenatal supplements because they're methylated folate to help with bioavailability, help you actually get all those nutrients back. And then obviously using omega-3 consumption to help with inflammation and balancing your omega ratios as well. Next is going to be the removal. So this is what we do obviously. This is why you deal with some of those things. So we remove the excess, estrogen out of the body, and then in the case of post pill would be the excess estrogen and progestin that was from the BC. Okay, so we do this by helping your liver, because when we look about it, so this is what I was talking about. So if you can't see this, it's all right. But we want to think about, this is how estrogen detoxification works. Your body makes it, okay, it pours into a bathtub. Your bathtub then has to get out of there, okay, and it gets out of there through stool or whatever. This is poorly explained right now, but I'd like to talk about this. So, all toxins are pretty much fat soluble. So your body has to neutralize it to turn it water soluble. Okay. So it uses these nutrients like vitamin B, folic acid, glutathione, flavonoids. Flavonoids are like the things that give some of the colors, um, of the fruits and the veggies. Okay. And then it has to do something called conjugated. Okay. You have something called conjugation pathways. And this helps with the elimination process, making it water soluble through the neutralization biotransformation. Okay. So it uses all these different nutrients. And then you excrete it through, I guess, yeah, urine, stool, or bile, whatever, liver. And then your body gets rid of it. So a big thing that actually helps with a lot of these is things like NAC, milk thistle, DIM, iodine 3 carbonyl, and sulfurine. Uh, and you don't really have to know these independent ingredients because I give you the pre-formulated ingredients. The ingredients that have all these are the supplements that have all these ingredients in them. Big thing is knowing the right dosages. Many supplement companies do not put enough anything in there. Okay, which is unfortunate. Okay, so that's a big thing to note as well. And then, so we got into the replenish phase, and then we talked about the removing of excess estrogen, and then we want to reinoculate. Okay, this is talking about bringing back good bacteria within the gut, because, like I said, birth control can cause altercations in the gut microbiome, slowing motility, throwing off gut bacterial balance. Okay, so we want to make sure that the gut is balanced. This is why we want to flush bad bacteria right away while supporting the liver. Because most people struggle with something called a dysbiosis or an overgrowth, meaning they have an overgrowth of bacteria within inside their gut that then causes those very upset bloating and things like that. So we're doing that as well. And then you can use additional supplements that like chaseberry, bioinositol, omega-3s, magnesium. I mean, I have everyone on magnesium. I mean, that's a given. And then adaptogens. I have everyone on adaptogens, depending on what your stress assessment says. So, that's all taken care of. Yeah, so this is technically what I'd say is a protocol, what you guys already do. But we want to actually go above calories in the beginning because we want to replenish all the nutrients that were lost. We always want to support the thyroid gland for a female because as a female, your metabolism really relies on something called the OAT axis, which is your ovaries, adrenal, thyroid axis. So it's a big negative feedback loop, and it talks together. And so when there's one altercation, one of those systems or organs or whatever, hormones, they cause imbalances between your bodies, just central communication point. Um, you know, so yeah, that's important. And then specifically when it's the right time, using a high quality probiotic, and then adaptogenic, and supporting progesterone and estrogen detoxification, whether it be like estrocort or chaseberry, liposomal chaseberry, things like that. All right, next is adrenal PCOS. So knowing how just really this goes down is the most important part of the adrenal PCOS, and that's really just when you are dealing with adrenal PCOS, you have cortisol imbalances. So you have your adrenal glands, which are located above your kidneys. So here's the thing. Your brain releases something called CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. It signals to something called the pituitary gland. So I also want you to know a lot of shit starts in the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So remember that a lot of it starts with the brain. Okay. So what happens is that it signals to the adrenals. Okay. Then the adrenals produce cortisol, norepinephrine, and epinephrine throughout your body. But that's good because it helps us with the fight or flight response. It helps us with training, it helps us with digestion, it helps us with building muscle, it helps us with losing fat, it helps us with regulating blood sugars. But just like it does all those things, it supports our immune system. But just like it does all those things, it can destroy all those things when it gets chronic. And that's what's happening with everyone today. We have chronic stress. Okay. So when you have this chronic stress, it suppresses, like I talked about before with the HPG axis, it it suppresses your HPA axis, okay, which is your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And when that gets depressed or suppressed, your body can't produce hormones correctly. Okay, ovulation gets thrown off via the HPG axis as well. Your body's not having proper ovulation. It throws off the progesterone release, messes up luteal phase, and all those things. So the biggest thing is obviously getting the stress under control through different supplementation styles, anti-inflammatory diet, even, and then obviously stress management. So that's bringing me into the inflammatory PCOS, which can really stem hand in hand with the adrenal, but more so talking about just when, you know, with the inflammation PCOS, what I see a lot is gut issues, because a lot of individuals that struggle with something called leaky gut, because the inflammation can come from not just a fucking processed food diet. We all know that shit. No, inflammation come from gut, gut dysbiosis, infections, and a leaky gut that can cause food intolerances that then activate the immune system. Okay. This is why you see women. So this is actually a good thing, because many women, it's like, oh, I got PCOS, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. I got rheumatoid arthritis. I got leaky gut. I got SIBO, and I got PCOS. Yes, that makes sense. You know why? Because all this shit is together. Okay. If you have a leaky gut, then that's going to activate the immune system. If you have an overactive immune system, that's going to, impair, the thyroid gland. If the antibodies are using that. And so then now your thyroid gland's getting deteriorated. You got high TPO antibodies, and then now you're at the point where you have TSH is just out of whack, so you got hypothyroidism. Okay, let alone now, ovulation is messed up, and here's why. Because if you have a leaky gut as a female, what can happen is that your body can, with leaky gut in itself, it releases, just let's say negative things into the bloodstream, and when those negative things get into the bloodstream, it inflames the bloodstream. And what happens is when you have an inflamed bloodstream, it inflames the ovaries. And when you have an inflamed ovaries, obviously you can only imagine what happens with the cycle. So that's how it works. Everything is together. It's not just one isolated thing. Okay, if my thyroid's messed up, it's not my thyroid gland that I need to focus on only. Sure, looking at mineral conversion and things like that is going to dramatically help. Sorry, I got this train. And then like just thinking about everything's working together. Okay. So, like I said, anti-inflammatory diet, which is what y'all doing, addressing gut health. We already do that. Antimicrobial supplements that so antimicrobial supplements, and then, repairing leaky gut, balancing the gut, gut fender or something like that. Removing common food allergens is a big one. Obviously many people are gluten, dairy, soy, corn, added sugars. And then using adrenal support, liver support, and then, cutting the training volume in the beginning to lower just that systemic inflammation. So, what I do want to end off is that I just want you, like I said, to focus on that if you like, all problems are really tied together. And what I mean by that is that, you never really meet a woman that's like, okay, I'm only dealing with this specific issue. It's mostly like, okay, I'm dealing with this issue as well. Okay. And that's because everything's working together in unison. Okay. So